Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dedicated IELTS session number 6. We will be talking about writing in this session, specifically task number 2. How's everybody doing? All right. So we got some IELTS fans here. So this is session number 6. How are you guys feeling about IELTS? Thoughts? Yeah. Do you guys prefer it to TOEFL? Do we have any TOEFL fans here? All right, so Sharifa says yes. You know what I've noticed? I've had a lot of students from different regions, and I've noticed it's very regional, which is kind of interesting. So I've noticed a lot of students from the Middle East prefer the IELTS. I've noticed that students from China prefer the TOEFL. Students from Vietnam prefer the IELTS. So it's a very kind of regional thing. It's kind of weird, right? Yeah, I'm not sure why it's like that, but it's just a very kind of regional thing. Yeah. All right, guys, so we are going to be talking about writing here. The first thing I thought that we would do is review how to do task number 1. So remember, task number 1 is a chart, and the things that you have to look for are the given information. You have to look for the general trend. You have to look for specifics and some kind of surprising or interesting information. So I thought really quickly we would do an essay together. How does that sound? Yeah, does this sound good? Okay. So here is the chart. So I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes. I want you to identify, first of all, the given information. I want you to identify the general trend. And then do you see anything that's kind of a weird thing or a surprising thing, any kind of an exception, something like that. All right, guys, so go ahead and give it a shot. I'll give you guys about 2 minutes. All right, good luck. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is rephrase the given information. So let's go ahead and do that. So I would say the bar charts illustrate what English graduate and postgraduate pupils who decided against full-time employment did post-graduation in 2008. Or let's say post-graduation, something like that. So notice there's some words I'm rephrasing, some words I'm not rephrasing. I'm not rephrasing, for example, chart. I'm not rephrasing graduate and postgraduate. So we're not talking about you have to rephrase every single thing. It's just more of a vocab thing. That's all. All right, so I don't think there's any disagreement about this, but there might be some disagreement about the general trend. So can I have a volunteer? What do you think is the general trend here? What would you write? So in general, what would you say? Any volunteers? All right, we have Vineeth. Hey, Vineeth, what do you think?
Hey Greg, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I see there's a general trend for after post graduation and graduation. If you look at different bar graphs, they are very similar.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I would say something similar. So I would say, in general, the trend appears constant for both graduates and postgraduates in what they decided to do after they left school. Something like that, right?
Yes.
Yep, I agree with you. Good job, Vineeth. Okay, does anyone have a different kind of trend line here or an in general statement? You know, sometimes there's more than one. No? Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Cool. All right. I just had a craving for Shake Shack. Maybe I'll go get a Shake Shack burger for lunch. Oh, Sharifa has a question. Hey, Sharifa, how are you?
Hi, Greg. I'm fine. Do we have to continue the sentence mentioning the scale that they are really different, or this is what we mentioned in the like interesting things or something like
So,
that?
specifically, what are you talking about? Specifically.
Like if you compare the two graphs, you
Uh-huh.
can see that they have a general, I mean, they look the same, but they have a very different scale. Like you can see here is thousands and there it's, I
Ah,
mean, 10,000s. So,
I would probably mention that maybe in the interesting information.
not
Um,
to that one.
or you could mention that in the specifics. Remember, the general statement is supposed to be pretty general, right?
Mhm.
It's supposed to be pretty general. So you don't necessarily want to get into too much detail because that kind of negates the purpose of the sentence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so mentioning the scale is probably getting into a little bit too specifics, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right,
Cool.
thank you.
Okay. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to start saying specific information. Okay. And remember, you're just following a template here. So more specifically, that's what I usually do. And then what I do is a combination of nouns and verbs. Nouns and verbs, right? The problem here is we are not, nothing's changing. That's the problem. So in many of these charts, you can talk about something changing. So you cannot say, for example, increased or decreased or anything like that. So you're going to have to be kind of careful with what you say here. More specifically, the majority of students for both graduate for both the graduate and postgraduate charts decided to pursue further study. And then you want to give specifics here, like I was talking to Sharifa, with nearly 30,000 graduates deciding, and nearly 3,000 postgraduates deciding to, I don't know. Let me read this. More specifically, the majority of students for both the graduate and postgraduate charts decided to pursue further study, with nearly 30,000 graduates and nearly 3,000 postgraduates doing so, something like that. Again, you don't want to get too caught up on the English here. You know, you just want to make sure it sounds pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect. At the end of the day, these are just English tests, so it doesn't need to sound like, you know, a work of art. Okay, so that's one sentence. So notice what I did is I commented on the maximums. So for the graduates, it's going to be the 30,000, and then for the postgraduates, it's about 3,000. And whenever you give specifics, you can always approximate. You know, you don't have to necessarily go way into it. Okay? Can somebody else raise their hand? What is another specific piece of information you would talk about here? Any volunteers? What do you think? What do you think? What would you talk about? I mean, you obviously have to make a decision, right? Okay, don't all raise your hand at one time because then I get overwhelmed. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Hey Vic, so I'm not sure about this, but for voluntary work at PG and graduates and for postgraduates, there are no,
Oh, so you're talking about voluntary work?
yeah,
Yeah. So how would you phrase it though?
more specifically, there are like minimum of students
Yeah.
for both graduate and
Regarding the course of action that the fewest graduates took or the fewest students took, you could say something like, I'm trying to think of how I would phrase this. It doesn't even have to be that complex, because again, this is the IELTS. It's not like the GRE. You could just say, in addition or furthermore, right? The least popular course of action for both groups of students. Again, I don't want to say graduates and postgraduates again because it's repetitive, right?
Yeah.
So for both groups of students was voluntary work with only 3,500 graduates and 345 postgraduates, let's say, opting for this direction. Something like that. Okay. Good job, Jameen. Very good.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yep. And then finally, remember, it's only 150 words, guys. I'm getting pretty close, right? I'm getting pretty close here. So I probably only need one more sentence, right? So you probably want to do a contrast of some sort. Does anybody see a contrast that you would highlight? Something that looks a little bit different? All right, let's go to Vineeth. Hey, Vineeth.
Hey Greg, I see for voluntary work, further study and employment, the scale at which it has been increased from postgraduates to graduates is nearly 10 times.
Yeah, but
that is
that's
not
the
the
interesting
same.
thing. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
so you're
the same is
highlighting
not true
something.
for part-time.
Yeah, but you're highlighting something very interesting, right?
Yes.
So I wouldn't blow that. Don't blow that yet. That should go into the interesting category. So remember, we
okay.
just want to say one more kind of specific piece of information. Do you see a contrast? The contrast is part-time work, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And so you would say something like, however, for part-time work, there exists a slight contrast, right?
Yes.
You could say graduates had this route as the second most popular option, as did postgraduates. Oops. But for the latter, it was almost as popular as further study, which was not the case for the graduates. Something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good job. Good job. So Vineeth is absolutely correct. With regard to the interesting piece of information, everybody, notice the scale. Doesn't it look like 10%? Voluntary work is 10% of this. Further study is 10% of this. Unemployment is 10% of this. Kind of interesting. Kind of an interesting thing, right? So I think that I would write that down. I agree with Vineeth here. I agree with the scale. And so you would say something to the effect of, interestingly, the postgraduate numbers in most cases are 10%, let's say approximately, are roughly 10% of the graduate numbers, right? Something like that. Thus indicating that the number, or thus indicating that the two groups, let's say, exist in a 10-to-1 ratio, with graduates far outnumbering postgraduates, something like that. And I think that's it, everybody. I think your essay is done. Okay, let's see how many words this is. You might want to put in one more sentence. So I'm opening up something right now. Okay, I'm just doing the word count. So this is 166 words, everybody. 166 words. Cool. Any questions about this? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's pretty straightforward. So any questions whatsoever before we move on to task number 2? We have a question from Vineeth. Hey, Vineeth.
Greg, what is the preferred number of words to write for IELTS essay?
I mean, I think I would just follow the directions. They say write more than 150. So if you write 170 to 200 or something like that, I think that's pretty good.
Okay, fine. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't stretch it for more than 200 so it doesn't look good.
I mean, more than 200 is okay, like 210, 220, that's okay, but if it's 300, that's way too long. And of course, the problem of writing more is you increase the probability that you make mistakes, right?
Yes,
And you
correct.
you increase the probability that you're repetitive. So that's why around 170 to 200 words is probably the sweet spot.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right. Yeah, and then pellucid is correct. You only have 20 minutes for this. So writing a 300 or 400 word essay is probably not feasible. Cool. All right, any more questions? Any more questions? All right, then. Let's move on. All right, so are you guys ready to talk about task number 2? Task number 2. Oh, we have a question from Jamin. Hey, Jamin.
Hey, Greg. So here's the thing. Like, for looking at this bar chart, thinking out that information is pretty much easy, but what if there's a process, like there's a life cycle or something?
Then you just have to follow the template. That's it. So what's the first thing you do?
Find the general trend that what's the process going on.
No. What's the first thing you do?
I mean, rewrite the thing.
Yeah,
information that's given.
given information, right? Given information. Rephrase it. What's the second thing you do? General trend.
And yeah,
Then specific, and then interesting. So even if you get a chart or a map or a process, something that you don't like, you're just going to follow the same template.
but finding out some like cool, interesting stuffs or general kind of specific, it's pretty hard when the process is concerned. Process type of questions are concerned.
Yeah, but what choice do you have? You can either try to do it or not do it, right?
Try to do it.
Yeah. So I mean, if you get a process or a map, you can either sit there and do nothing, or you can try to do it. Keep in mind, the general trend is supposed to cover the entire chart or the entire process or the entire map. If you say something as a general trend that only covers a portion of it, that's not correct.
So it's just like a whole summary of just a list of things that you're supposed to say, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And don't forget. Oh, sorry. Don't forget you're allowed to edit. So, for example, would I say the trend appears constant? Well, trend indicates something changes, right? So I might use the word breakdown instead. Don't forget you're allowed to edit. You're allowed to, see if you want to change a word or something like that. Okay, Rishika has a question. Hey, Rishika.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good too. So, I had two questions.
Sure.
First, I wanted to run my opening sentence by you.
Okay.
So, I've written, we are given graphs from the year 2008 demonstrating the paths taken by students in the UK having bachelor's and master's degrees who didn't take up full-time jobs after graduating.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, that almost sounds too rephrased. Yeah, but no, it was good. It was good. But for me, I think you're taking the harder route because it was a good sentence. It was a good sentence. But really, all you have to do is just kind of change some of the words. But yes, if you want to do it that way, that's okay.
Yes, and that actually brings me to my second question. I mean, I have a thing, I write very wordy sentences. They are always, very prolix, if that's the right word to use. So they're always very, very wordy. And will this be a disadvantage to me?
Yeah, for a couple reasons. Number one, if every sentence is wordy, are you showing syntactical variety?
I'm not sure.
No. Syntactical variety means different kinds of sentences, right? We like people to show syntactical variety. Number two, though, when you have a really wordy sentence, you increase the probability that two problems happen. Number one is repetition. Number two is awkward phrasing, and actually three things. So number one, repetition, awkward phrasing, and then grammar mistakes. So I would say occasionally you want to have a long sentence because it shows the grader that you're able to produce one. But also you want to mix in some shorter sentences and make sure you're not being repetitive or giving yourself an opportunity to make grammar mistakes.
Okay, got it.
Make sense?
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on here. So this is a writing task too. Now there's a couple things you have to notice. Sometimes they actually give you given information. So look here. So everyone go ahead and read that. I'll give you about 10 seconds. Okay, now look at the question. So here's my question for you. Am I allowed to disagree with this? Am I allowed to disagree with the given information? The answer is no, you cannot. Am I allowed to say that, in fact, countries are becoming more different? Can I say that? No, that's not what they're asking you. They're saying, hey, this is true. This is true. And you have to say whether it's positive or negative. You cannot say that actually countries are becoming different, right? So you're not allowed to disagree with this. Does that make sense? This is given information, right? If you were to disagree with this, they might ding you for being off topic. They might say, actually, this is off topic. All right, so that's number one. That's the first thing I want you to realize. Make sure you read the question carefully. Number two, they recommend you write 250 words. They also give you 40 minutes. So here's my question. Should you write 250 words if you have 40 minutes? No, that's a bad idea. Yeah, you should definitely write more. So my advice to you, you should be shooting more for about 350 words. Okay, 350 words. And then finally, the IELTS, more than the TOEFL, likes nuance. The IELTS, more than the TOEFL, likes nuance. So what does that mean? Should you give a strongly agree position, a strongly disagree position, a mostly agree position, or a mostly disagree position? Yeah, in my opinion, you should give a mostly. So I want you to think about this essay as GRE light. So this is like a GRE light essay. So let me show you how I would organize this. Okay? The way that I would organize this is I would say it is mostly positive. Mostly positive. So I'm going to give reason 1 and then reason 2. And then finally, what I'm going to do in body 3 is I'm going to give a drawback. Now remember, you have to be careful, mostly positive about what? What am I saying is positive, everybody? What fact, what observation is a positive thing? The countries are becoming more similar. And I have to give 2 reasons why. Okay, so that's number 1. And then finally, you have to say a disadvantage of this. All right, I'm going to give you guys about 3 minutes to think of 3 reasons. So I want us to imagine that this is a mostly positive thing, countries becoming similar. Think of 2 reasons and a drawback of this process. Okay, let me get my timer out. All right, hello timer. I know you guys cannot see it. Okay, can you see the timer? Okay, because this is our first IELTS essay, I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes to plan this. All right, good luck. Okay, can I take a volunteer? What do you guys think? Give me 2 positive reasons, give me a drawback, give me 1. I don't care. You don't have to give me all 3. What are you guys thinking? All right. Hey, Shweta, how are you? You have to unmute your microphone.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
I'm fine. So it increases opportunities as you can apply for jobs or other things globally as
I like that.
things will be available.
Yeah, so basically it increases connections between these countries, which allows people to kind of seek employment globally. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Very good. Do you have another one?
I can have like a drawback
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
because it's almost similar and you do not get to experience the new cultures there like more, because if things are available you tend to use the things that are available and you're more comfortable with.
Yep, I agree. So we're losing some cultural
Local
diversity, right?
cultures,
Yeah. We're losing some, local Indian stuff. We're losing some countryside American stuff. Yeah, it's all kind of becoming more homogenous, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I like that. Hey, Jamin, what's up?
So yeah, I guess the reasons are same and even the drawback same, but I would like to add another reason.
Like a positive reason, sure.
Yeah. Increase in the use of the same technology increases familiarity.
Okay, so increasing using the same technology increases what?
Familiarity of that particular technology of that product.
Okay. So we just get more kind of accustomed to technology and all the same technology. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Good. And let's do one more. Hey, Vineeth, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I want to add another positive point.
Sure.
Yeah, the local industries can expose their products globally.
Yep.
Like handloom products, etc., which are local, can now be a global thing.
Yeah, so it helps the local industry, right?
Yes.
I like that a lot. Now, of course, if we want to take a nuanced approach, we could also say that this hurts local industry, right? So, the American global foreign policy for much of the 20th century was it encouraged countries to liberalize their economies, open their economies to global trade. And what happens when you immediately open your economy to global trade? You get flooded with American products. And when you get flooded with American products, then a lot of local businesses go out of business, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? All right, good job, guys. So let's talk about how to write this. Remember, this is primarily an English test. So if you sit around worrying too much about what you're going to write, that's not a good thing. You want to focus mostly on just getting it done, making sure the English is good. All right, so let's talk about the template. Here's the template I suggest you follow. Okay, so template. So for the introduction, the first thing that I'm going to say is I'm just going to rephrase the given information. Rephrase the given. If the given information is not there, then I'll just say a trend or something like that. Then I'm immediately going to go into my thesis. I mostly think this is a positive development. And then finally, I'm going to give my outline. And remember, my outline has 3 components. It's going to be those 2 reasons, and then finally the concession. So as you can see, this is very similar to a GRE essay, except it's just not as complicated or as advanced. All right, so let me show you what this looks like, everybody. So we're going to write right here. All right. There we go. Okay. All right, so the first thing I want to do is rephrase that given information. So what is that given information? Countries are becoming more and more similar because people are able to buy the same products anywhere in the world. Okay, so we say this. We say, according to the prompt, countries around the world are becoming more homogeneous because they have access to the same products. Okay, everyone agree with that? All right, so notice what I'm doing here. I'm just doing the rephrase the given. That's all I'm doing. Rephrase the given. And then I'm immediately going to go into my thesis. And I'm going to say, in my opinion, remember, you want to be clear. You want to be clear. In my opinion, this is mostly a positive development for 2 reasons. However, there is one significant drawback that will be discussed below, something like that. Now notice, this is very similar to a GRE essay, it's just not on steroids. You know, a GRE essay tends to be a little more complex, there's a shift to the prompt, you know, there's a little bit more use of syntactical variety and syntactical complexity, etc., etc. All right. Any questions about paragraph 1? Because paragraph 1 is finished. That's it. Paragraph 1 is done. Hey, Asir, you have a question?
Yeah, do we need a hook or anecdote?
No, remember, the problem with thinking of a hook is it's kind of valuable wasted time, isn't it?
Yeah, but
Right.
I kind of memorized some quotations that are used in GRE. Can I do that in this?
I'm typically not a fan of quotations only because they seem so contrived. But if it's truly memorized and you can actually do it in like 10 seconds, then that's fine.
Yeah, I kind of have memorized 10 or 11. I can mostly use them in various topics.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions about this, guys? All right. Can you use strong vocabulary in this essay? You can use a word like homogeneous, but you don't want to overuse it. You know, if you overuse GRE vocabulary, it's going to come across as very pretentious and very snobbish. So that's number 1. Number 2, I don't mean to be a jerk, but I would say probably over half of the time when you guys use GRE vocab, you use it incorrectly. How dare you, Greg? How dare you? So it's quite difficult for you guys to use GRE vocabulary correctly. Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about a body paragraph. Here's a body paragraph. Remember, we're not trying to do rocket science here. We're just trying to be straightforward. So start with a transition. Okay? Restate the thesis. Restate the thesis. And then give the reason. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay? So I'm going to say, first of all, countries becoming more like each other or becoming more alike is positive because it gives local producers the chance to sell their products to a global market. Something like that. The idea doesn't really matter. It's not like someone's going to say, I disagree, that's wrong, that doesn't make sense. Remember, this is an English test. It's an English test, which means even the examples can be fake. You know, the examples don't really have to be true. Yeah, it's not the GRE. It's not the GRE. Yeah. Jimmy, good point. It's not a reasoning test. Does the IELTS determine whether your essay is persuasive or not? Do they measure that? Is one of their categories persuasiveness? No, it's not. It's just English. Okay? All right, what do I do now? So I just gave my topic sentence. What do I do now? Give an example. Okay? So let's give an example. For example, Indian snack manufacturers can now sell their products in ethnic supermarkets in the United States with ease. Something like that. Right? Yeah, masala box. Yeah, we can use that if you want. You can now buy the masala box. Okay? Now, what I typically like to do is I like to give another example. So let's use an example not from India, right? Can somebody give me another example of something you can buy in the United States or something you can even buy in your own country from a different country? So in addition, anyone want to give me, like burgers, but I mean, you don't want to say snacks again. Noodles, sushi. Okay. But notice that doesn't mean local producers, right? It's not like the sushi manufacturer, right? Try to give a local producer example. Yeah, clothes. Yeah, no, but clothes, that's different. Clothes are designed with globally in mind, right? Try to give an example of something that's typically local, but it can now be, handcrafts, jewelry. Okay. In addition, I don't know. We could say something like consumers in, let's say, Africa can now purchase American laundry detergent in their own stores. Something like that. Okay? Make sense? A lot of your guys' examples didn't really make sense because you weren't really saying a local producer. It has to be like a local thing that becomes global. All right. Now, is this paragraph finished? Yes or no? I have to do one more thing. What do I have to do? I have to explain something. I have to explain why it is positive that local producers can sell globally. So everyone, think about this. Take about 1 minute. Why is this positive? Why is this a good thing? Okay. Okay, can I take a volunteer? What is the benefit of this? What is the benefit? Let's go to Jamin. Okay, go ahead, Jamin.
Yeah, if the person is not is somewhere around the world and he has some cravings for some local food, but now since the local producers have been global, so if he's lucky, then he might get that particular cuisine.
Okay, so we could say this is clearly a positive trend because now individuals can enjoy their favorite local cuisines and products even when they are abroad, right?
Yeah.
Something like that? Okay. Can you think of another positive development? Why else is it this good? Does it help the local economy?
Yeah, it does help.
Exactly, right?
Economy.
Moreover, this process is doing much to reduce poverty in many regions of the world as local producers have access to expanded markets, something like that.
Is that particular nation's GDP?
I mean, you could say whatever you want as long as the English is good, right? Because remember, this
Yeah.
is an English test. So
Yeah.
even if this is not true, like I said, you know, the process of liberalizing an economy produces winners and losers. Some people win, some people lose. In many cases, the local producers actually lose. They don't win. So even though this statement might be wrong, it doesn't matter on the IELTS.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thanks.
So that's it, guys. I mean, that's a body paragraph. Does anybody have any questions about this? I mean, to me, it's pretty straightforward. And then, of course, we would do that again, right? We would say, you know, secondly, right? nations looking more like each other is advantageous because, and then we would give a second reason, because product quality in all regions of the world goes up. So of course, whenever we're all using the same products, quality tends to go up, not down, right? And then you can give an example, something like that, right? Okay. Yeah, no, you don't put the quotes here. The capitalization. I'm just telling you guys to not forget it. Don't forget to put the word mostly. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, we have a concession. And, you have to understand the concession is very similar with one difference. Instead of saying furthermore or secondly or in addition or first of all, what is the transition that you're using? However. And then everything else is the same. And everything else is the same. So you say, however. Right? Nation homogeneity does have one disadvantage: the loss of cultural distinctions. And then you give an example, right? You could give an example about India. For example, 100 years ago, many of the women wore a sari on a daily basis. Now they're wearing American jeans, something like that, right? It doesn't really matter what you say. It only matters that the English is good, right? You could say, for example, in the past, Americans were all eating potatoes and beef every day. Now they're having raw sashimi. They're losing some of that traditional American culture. Again, it doesn't really matter what you say as long as the English is good. And then don't forget, after the example, so let's imagine I have example 1 here and example 2. What do I need to describe, or what do I need to say? I need to talk about something being negative. What do I need to talk about? What comes after the examples? I need to explain why losing cultural diversity is a bad thing. And you cannot just say, Greg, it's obvious. Are you going to write that in your essay? Are you going to say it's obvious? No, so you obviously have to give a reason or two, right? Okay. And then finally, there's a conclusion, but do you really need to do anything in the conclusion other than summarize? No, the conclusion is very straightforward. The conclusion is just, in conclusion, right? We're not trying to be fancy here. In conclusion, countries becoming similar is primarily a positive thing for the 2 reasons outlined above. Nevertheless, it's not a perfect change, and the loss of cultural diversity is happening. Something like that. And then what do you know? You get a 9.0. Cool? Yeah, it's GRE light. Yeah, it's literally GRE light. All right. Any questions about this? The advantage of the IELTS is you don't have to worry about the strength of your ideas. On the GRE, you kind of do have to worry about the strength of your ideas, whereas here you don't really need to. Okay. Notice I'm using the word does here. Can somebody tell me why? If you're a GRE student, you should know why. Why am I using the word does here? What does the word does indicate? It indicates a concession. It indicates a concession. Yeah. So, are there any questions about this? How do you know the number of words? On the IELTS, I'm not sure, Taciturn. The IELTS used to be on paper, so I assume you just have to count. I'm not sure about the computer. Hey, Ruchika, how are you?
Hi, Greg. I'm good. So, Greg, my question is not related to this. So, I wanted to know how is the marking system like? Since this is more number of words, so does this have more weightage than the first one, or how is it?
Yeah, good question. On the TOEFL, no, it doesn't. So task 1 and task 2 have equal weight. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
On the IELTS, however, task 2 has more weight. Yeah, I think that's the system. Let me Google it. I thought I remember reading that somewhere. Let me Google it. Does IELTS task 2 carry more weight? Let's see. Yeah, no, they're not equal value. So I'm reading this right now. So let me read it. No, they are not. Writing task 2 is worth more than writing task 1. You get twice the points for writing task 2 than you get for writing task 1. In other words, so it's a 2-to-1 ratio. Yeah, so basically you're looking at, 67% to 33%.
Mm-hmm. And the average is taken for a final, like.
Well, it's a weighted average, right? It's a weighted average.
Yeah.
Hmm. So let's imagine, for example, remember it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So let's imagine you get a 7 on task 2. And you get let me not use the ratio, that's confusing. You get a 7 on task 2 and you get a 6 on task 1. So that means you're going to get double the points for task 2, so that's going to be 14, and then that stays at 6, so 14 plus 6. Yeah, 20 divided by 3, which would be what? 6, 6 and 2/3, which they would probably round up to 7. Mm-hmm.
Also, like, what are the parameters where they are going to, markers? Of course, the word number of words comes into the count.
Good question. Let's go ahead and look at the IELTS writing rubric. Good question. Okay, I'm gonna get it right now, and then I'm gonna put it on PowerPoint. Okay, hold on one sec. So the cool thing about IELTS is they actually look at individual things, whereas the TOEFL gives what's called a holistic score. Holistic means they just look in general. But the IELTS is different. They look at specific things. So number 1, they look at what they call task achievement, which means did you actually answer the question? Do you guys remember how a lot of you were saying, I can disagree with this idea that countries are more similar? You would actually get marked down for task achievement because you didn't talk about whether this is a positive or negative development. Coherence and cohesion, that deals with like transition words. My thesis, the reason 1, the reason 2, example, for example, in addition, in contrast, that kind of stuff. Lexical resource indicates vocab. So for example, remember I was using the word homogeneous and homogeneity, but you don't want to overdo it. You can also look at things like the following. So here I use the word similar. Here I use the word alike. Here I use the word homogeneous. That kind of stuff right there. So be careful about GRE words because it's going to come across as very pretentious. And then finally, grammar, right? But notice grammar from 2 aspects. Grammar range and accuracy. Do you know the difference between these, Ruchika?
Not really.
So grammar range means variety. Some of your sentences are long, some of your sentences are short, some of your sentences have dependent clauses, some of your sentences don't have dependent clauses. That's what they mean by that. And then finally, grammar accuracy just means not making errors, not making mistakes.
Okay, yeah, that gives an idea.
Yeah, and you can actually see the breakdown here. See this right here? Uses a mix of simple and complex sentence forms, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool?
Yeah. Yes.
Alrighty. So that's basically what they're looking for, guys. Any more questions? Asir says, Greg, can we have more IELTS classes? I'm not sure exactly, Asir. These tend to be the least popular, but I know some of you guys want them. Okay. Any more questions? So I know I didn't give you guys homework for this session, but I will be giving you guys homework for the next session. So the homework is going to be you have to write a task 1 and a task 2. And then I'll take some volunteers and we'll look at your essays. Cool, guys? If there are no more questions, we can go ahead and wrap this up. So are you sure? No more questions? All right, guys. Everyone have a wonderful Thursday. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.